All right, people. It's Music Monday. All right, it is Music Monday, and today in the skillet we're going to be talking about Appalachian Boogie Blues. All right, man. I wrote this song a while back. I think there's probably a lot more going on in this song than people think. It's kind of a fun bluesy shuffle, kind of moves along, feels kind of light. But when you start listening to it, you're like, "Ooh, wow, there's a little bit more in this than I thought." So let's just dig right into it. I made some notes on this one because I didn't want to forget it all because there's some interesting stuff in it. This song is somewhat autobiographical. I use myself as, the distant reference in the whole thing without it being too obvious. And really what it's about trying to get through life and the destination of wherever it is you're heading without being too judgmental, hypocritical, or totally self-absorbed. A lot of people don't get that. That's what it's about. All right, now get right into it. That chorus section in the second part where it says, "Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise." I know everybody has probably heard that expression. It's an old slang mountain term, probably not a mountain term, but that's where I heard it. And the old folks used to use it. And what it is in reference to is, hey, if you got to get somewhere, or you tell somebody you can be somewhere, do something, and you plan on doing it, and you'd say, well, God willing, and some horrible, unforeseen set of circumstances or events doesn't happen, I'll be there. So that's kind of where that came from. But the main line is the one right behind it, and that line says, "And judging on another with a beam in your eye." All right, okay. This is the real meat and potatoes of the whole song. So that's kind of a biblical reference about, hey, don't be casting judgment and critique on anyone else until you take care of your own camp. So worry about yourself and get your own affairs in order before you start criticizing and being hypercritical or judgmental of others. That's really the whole theme of the song. So I want to get into that second verse because there was a cool part in that. I think a lot of people might gloss right over it. There is a William Golden, Lord of the Flies, reference in the end of that second verse. And that was I think he wrote that in like the early 50s, 1954. If you've never read Lord of the Flies, it's an interesting book about a bunch of kids who got stranded if I can remember this, got stranded on a deserted island, and they tried to set up some type of social order, a hierarchy of the totem pole of leadership and the order of how everything's going to work. They try to govern themselves, and it turns out to be a complete disaster. But it's an interesting book. Caught a lot of flack, back in the old days. It got banned in a lot of schools because it tied into some bullying themes and all kinds of stuff. It's really not a whole lot different than what's going on in our society and our culture today, which is kind of where this all ties together. The last verse, the Appalachian Boogie Blues part says, where'd that come from? Well, I'm a mountain kid, so I just kind of used myself and my geographical area as a landing point for the end of the journey. So I'm like, I used Appalachia. I had this idea of an old mountain guy going down the road barefoot, just beat to hell. And, times are hard. You're trying to get through this thing called life, like I said, best you can without being a complete, self-absorbed a-hole. All right, so that last part, and it's got that reminder at the end of that last verse. Look, the more stuff you put in the wagon, the heavier it gets to pull. So that's just part of how it goes, and you don't want to load it up because you're the one that's going to have to be toting it around. You're probably going to be doing it by yourself. It's kind of a fun tune. Like I said, it's a bluesy shuffle. Kind of reminds me of something, that J.J. Cale might have done. But, really when you start listening to this one, there's a deeper undercurrent of a probable social decline lyrically floating right underneath this song. So it kind of shows my Robert Hunter type humorous take on songwriting. He was a big influence on me, and I think you can kind of hear the way I play with some of the words in this one. You can pick out that influence. When you listen to this tune, there's that little thing at the beginning of it where it's like, "Snicks, Snicks." There's Snicks over there. You can't have no song called Appalachian Boogie Blues, no banjo in it. So I was just being a hick, and I was sitting there playing the banjo part. I was recording it at the beginning of this song, and the dog came over and was looking at me like, "Man, what is that thing, that twangy, clinkety thing you're banging on there? Could you not play that?" So I just told Snicks, I was getting ready to hit record. I said, Snicks, you can't have a song like this with no banjo in it. And that's how it got in there. So if you're wondering where that little hillbilly reference came to at the front of it, all inspired by the dog. Now, I think that's about it. You know, when you listen to a song, I said it's kind of light, bouncy, and fun. But you start listening to those words, man. There's more going on in there than you think. Which a lot of my songs are like that. So that's what is in the skillet on Music Monday, and as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story.